So I now call the public hearing of the City of Urbana Community Development Commission to order at 6 p.m., February 24th, 2026. And we need a roll call.
All right. Make sure this is actually working. Chris is not here. Rachel Harp. Patricia Jones.
Here.
Ann Hines Silvas.
Here.
And Alex Womack.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum. The purpose of the public hearing is to receive citizen input regarding the City of Urbana and Urbana Home Consortium fiscal year 2026-27 annual plan. The action plan identifies needs, goals, strategies related to community development outcomes and use of CDBG and home program funds through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, over the period July 1st, 2026 to June 30th, 2027. Notice of the public hearing was shared through the local newspaper and posted on the city website and social media. A draft version of the action plan is available for review and comment from February 20th to March 23rd, 2026, and can be reviewed at the city website, in person at City Hall, and in person at the Urbana Free Library. Individuals attending this hearing may provide input on the action plan. Comments may also be sent to staff by email at grants@urbanail.gov. And comments regarding the draft plan will continue to be accepted until March 23rd, 2026 at 5 p.m. The final draft of the action plan incorporating comments received will be submitted to HUD in late spring of 2026. And then can we amend the roll to include Chris, Diana? And now staff will give a brief presentation about the action plan.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nick Olson. I'm the Interim Grants Division Manager for the City of Urbana. As you heard this evening, we're going to be discussing the 2026 through 2027 annual action plan. This corresponds to the city's fiscal year period of July 1st, 2026 through June 30th of 2027. So this will be the plan for our HUD grants over that period. So just as general background, the City of Urbana is an entitlement grantee of Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnership funding through the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. We receive CDBG funds as the city, and we receive home funds as the Home Consortium, consisting of Urbana, Champaign, and then unincorporated parts of Champaign County. The annual action plan is a required component of receiving these funds from HUD, and it is a yearly increment of our 5-year consolidated plan. And again, the planning process identifies how we are going to use these funds to meet needs that have been identified in the community over the next year. As a quick overview of the different potential uses of these programs' funds, CDBG can be used for a pretty wide range of different community development activities. So this would include things like public services. In the past, the city has included CDBG funds in its youth services grant program. Most recently, we supported emergency rental assistance in partnership with Cunningham Township. It can also support public infrastructure and facilities improvements in qualifying census tracts. It can support economic development activities, and it can also support housing rehabilitation. The home program is targeted a little more specifically towards affordable housing and can support things like tenant-based rental assistance, as well as construction or rehabilitation of affordable housing. And this includes things that we do in partnership with community housing development organizations like Habitat, who were here for a funding agreement recently. So again, the annual action plan is a 1-year increment of our 5-year consolidated plan. Our most recent 5-year consolidated plan, which covers the 2025 through 2029 period, was approved last year, and we are currently in the first year of that consolidated plan period. So our next fiscal year will correspond to the second year of our consolidated plan period. So just a quick note on the kinds of data that we use to inform our plans. We look at a variety of different data sources, including things like census data, HUD data, local organization plans and reports, consultations with service providers, and then we also regularly do needs surveys with the community. Because the action plan is a bit more of a truncated version of our plan than the consolidated plan was, it does not itself include a needs assessment and market analysis, but that was included in our recent consolidated plan, and we continue to refer back to that data. So there are varying levels of planning and structure that are either upstream or downstream of each other within the consolidated plan and corresponding action plans. So at the highest level in our consolidated plan, we establish needs, and then from there we establish goals, and that's kind of in terms of, how many homes do we expect we're going to rehabilitate, how many infrastructure projects do we anticipate doing, and in the consolidated plan, we lay that out over a 5-year framework, and then in each action plan, we lay out what we think we're going to meet towards that goal in the next program year. And then the action plan also includes projects, which are the more specific pools of activities. So just a quick refresher on the priority needs that were laid out in our consolidated plan. As you can see, they're pretty broad groups here. This gives us flexibility from year to year with the kinds of activities that we do. So we have affordable housing. This would include things like rental assistance, and new housing construction, community services. So this would include things like public service activities, as well as the rehabilitation programs that we provide, and then community development, which includes things like infrastructure activities and economic development. So there are a number of different sections in the annual action plan. I would say the real core components that lay out the resources we expect to have and what we plan to do with them are section AP 15 on expected resources, section AP 20, which lays out our annual goals and objectives, and section AP 35 and 38, which actually lay out the specific projects and their budgets we anticipate undertaking over the next year. So in terms of the anticipated resources, we are currently budgeting in the draft plan with the amount of $392,195 in CDBG funding and $633,154.18 in home funding. This is an estimate that is based on the previous year's allocation. The actual allocation for our next year's budget has not been announced by HUD yet. This often happens at the time when we're going through the public comment cycle. HUD does allow us to use previous year estimates as a placeholder, and then we will update the budgets proportionally when the actual allocation is announced by HUD. So here I have the budgets for the actual projects that are included in the consolidated plan. So at the top, we have planning and administration. This is something that is capped by federal regulations. We have neighborhood stabilization, which includes things like property acquisition, demolition, and new construction. So that would be things like if in one of our qualifying census tracts there was a vacant and abandoned, dilapidated property, CDBG funds could potentially be used to acquire that property, demolish the structure on it, and then donate it for another eligible use, as well as code enforcement in our target areas. Under the housing and supportive services goal, we have public services again. We anticipate continuing our rental assistance agreement with Cunningham Township. That funding has been very helpful and successful thus far. And then we've also budgeted for continuation of our housing rehabilitation program and then program delivery costs associated with housing rehabilitation. So that would be things like we work with our city building inspectors to coordinate inspections and bidding processes for rehabilitation activities. So some of those activities would fall under program delivery. And then under the home program, we have budgeted for, again, planning and administration. Again, this is something that is capped by federal regulations. We have budgeted for Chodo developer support and Chodo capacity building support. As a reminder, this would be for support for local affordable housing development organizations. Most recently, we funded Habitat through the Chodo program. This is a set aside within the home program where a certain portion of our home allocation is earmarked specifically for this use by federal regulations. And then we anticipate continuing to fund TBRA at the level of $100,000 out of next year's allocation. And then again, because home funds are split across the consortium, we split the amount that we budget for affordable housing in each different city proportional to each city's population. So for Champaign, we have budgeted some for affordable housing as well as in Urbana. And then just a note on these budgets. As you may recall, with the consolidated plan last year, there was a discussion where we had to revise the budget because for a while we were doing budgets in a way where we were including prior year balances in each action plan's budget. The most recent guidance we have received from HUD is that we should not be including prior year funds in new action plan budgets. The new budget is basically just for the new funds, and the previous funds are basically bound to the budget in their initial action plan. So for example, if I go back to the CDBG budget here, if you've been keeping tabs on the projects that have been included in action plans from year to year, we did include amounts for economic development and infrastructure activities. The way our con plan was set up, we budgeted a larger amount in the first year, and we are continuing to spend those funds down. But because in the consolidated plan, we did not budget continued funding for those year over year, they have not been included in the budget for this year. But I do want to note that those funds are still available, and we will continue working to spend those down. So as far as next steps for the action plan, it is currently in a public comment period where drafts are available in various locations that I will cover on the next slide. That comment period goes from February 20th through March 23rd. The plan will come back to the Community Development Commission for a formal vote at its regular March meeting. And then we anticipate taking it to City Council sometime in April. And then our current schedule has us submitting it to HUD by May 15th. The current deadline we are working with is 45 days before our program year begins, which would be on July 1st, which would have us submitting the plan to HUD by May 15th. There have been times in previous years where if allocation announcements are delayed beyond that May 15th date, then we have a little longer to submit the plan. So we'll kind of play it by ear. Based on our conversations with our HUD rep, we are currently expecting to have our allocation by May 15th, but we'll just keep an eye on it and update the commission accordingly. And then our actual program year that these funds would cover would begin on July 1st of 2026. So copies of the draft plan are currently available on the city website. Physical copies are available in the Community Development Office, as well as the City Clerk's Office and at the Urbana Free Library. Folks can also reach out to us by phone or email, and we're happy to answer any questions about the plan, take comments, or provide a copy. And then we do also have a community needs survey that we're distributing throughout the community, and we have a QR code available for that here. So we certainly encourage commissioners are welcome to fill that out and share it with your networks. But yep, that's a general overview of this year's action plan, but I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Question about the survey, Nick. That's for anyone, not just people in target area, but anyone in the city, anyone in the county?
So anyone in the consortium area is able to take that survey because this plan does cover that whole region. The survey does include questions about where do you currently reside, just in a general sense. We're not asking for people's specific addresses. But if we do want to narrow it down a little further when we're analyzing the data, we can do that based on the information we're getting.
So you would want us to share the invitation to participate in the survey broadly?
Yes, and we do have a flyer that we've been distributing throughout the community. There's actually one on the door of council chambers here, but I can email that out to the commission, and I think it's gone out through city social media as well.
When did that open? When did that survey open?
So we opened it when the draft plan went out last Friday, the 20th.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be helpful if you emailed it, because then we can email it around, forward the email.
Yeah,
invitation
absolutely.
From you, okay. Any other questions for Nick?
Yeah, just a question. I'm just trying to clarify in my mind. This goes back to the situation that we discussed previously about how HUD wanted numbers reported that were unspent funds from prior years.
Mm-hmm.
So if I understand correctly, the way we talked about it before, those funds were being carried over and they were being used to cover items that showed up in the current year plan.
Mm-hmm.
So now if we aren't carrying them over, are we not showing the activities that they're being used for in the current year plan?
So if there was a project that was budgeted in a previous plan and isn't being budgeted in the current year plan, then that activity doesn't show up in the plan. We can still undertake those activities using that initial funding source and consistent with the strategies laid out in that initial plan. They will show up in our annual consolidated performance report, and they will show up there as counting towards the 5-year accomplishments for that year, because they weren't included in the 1-year goals because there weren't so it gets a little convoluted, but there are ways of tracking it, and we've been checking in with our HUD rep.
But that's all I was wondering, because my understanding of that was part of what they were trying to capture was overages in funding for projects that didn't require as much fund. It was never quite as clear what was, from their perspective, was going to happen with those overages.
Mm-hmm. So
Certainly, we don't want them to just be used for something that doesn't show up, which, as you indicate, is not the case.
Mm-hmm. And the first thing we go to if we have rollover funds at the end of a program year is we work to continue undertaking the activities that they were initially budgeted for. If circumstances have changed and that just doesn't look realistic, or there's a more pressing need that rollover funds could potentially be used for, there is a process for amending a previous
In a
year's
sense,
action
to
plan.
repurpose them.
Yes, but there would be a formal process for that, and we would do that as we need.
Thanks. That's good.
Any other questions for Nick? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Now that staff have concluded the presentation, I declare this public hearing open. If anyone desires to express their views regarding community needs or the action plan, please come forward and be recognized. Also, written comments are welcome. We don't have anyone in the audience. So seeing that there are no further comments, I now declare the public hearing closed. Thank you. And then we are ready to call to order our regular meeting of the Urbana Community Development Commission. Can we have roll call, please?
Chris Diana,
Here?
Rachel Harp, Patricia Jones,
Here.
Ann Hines Silvas.
Here.
And Alex Womack.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum. So the first thing on our agenda are approval of the minutes of our previous meeting, which was January 27th, 2026. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes from the meeting from January 27th, 2026.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Patty. Any discussion about the minutes as provided, and that would be our January 27th meeting? Any discussion? Okay. All in favor of the motion on the table, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The ayes have it, and the minutes are approved. Were there any additions to the agenda for this evening?
No,
Was there any public input provided?
there was not.
Okay. Are there any presentations?
No.
Thank you. Going right through our agenda here. That brings us to the staff report.
Sure. Just a few quick updates since we're here. We've been providing a few updates on our community services grants at previous meetings. So just to note that that application cycle is now open. It opened early in February, and that deadline, if organizations are interested in applying for that opportunity, is April 6th at 5 p.m. Again, that's a grant opportunity for local nonprofits and public entities providing programs and services benefiting low-income Urbana residents in a number of eligible service areas. Information is on our website. We did a press release and got some nice news coverage on it. So it seems like word's getting around the community. But we can certainly share some information with the commission. I'll send some information on that out with the survey as well. So feel free to share that out with your networks. Next, just an update that following our last Community Development Commission meeting, the CHOTO funding agreements with Habitat for Humanity went to council where they were unanimously approved. So we look forward to seeing those homes built and those households being served through our programs. And then just a quick staffing update that, as you see, Eric is catching on quickly and he's doing a great job in the division. I haven't scared him off yet. And then the manager position for our division has been posted as well. As I noted previously, I'm currently the interim manager, so this will fill that position in a long-term capacity. That's all I've got for tonight.
Thanks, Nick. Any other questions or comments on the staff report provided by Nick? Okay, is there any unfinished business before us this evening?
There's not.
Okay. Any new business?
No.
Well, that brings us to the end of our agenda, and seeing nothing more on our agenda, I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.